There's something you know that you are good at, something that you know still matters to you. Yet every time that you think about doing it again, you hesitate because it doesn't feel the way that it used to. But here's the truth that no one tells you. You ready? Sometimes that feeling doesn't come back until after you commit to it again. If you've been questioning whether the lack of joy means that you're off track, this video is for you. By the end of this video, you're going to understand why losing the feeling doesn't mean that you've lost alignment. And you're going to realize how to move forward without waiting to feel inspired again. Because if you keep letting emotional distance make the decision, then you may walk away from the very thing that you still feel like you should be doing. A lot of people assume that if the joy is gone, then the path got to be wrong. They think that if something is aligned, it should always feel easy to come back to. But that assumption ignores what disappointment actually does. When something mattered to you and it didn't work out the way that you hoped, you don't just move on cleanly. You pull back. Not because you stopped caring, but because it stopped feeling comfortable. It didn't come as easy as it did before, right? And that discomfort is what's actually creating the delay. Take myself, for example. I think about creating content specifically on YouTube. I hadn't created content for over 3 years, and I was ready to get back into creating content again. And one thing that I realized that during that time that I just didn't feel like having that same joy that I did before in 2023. And it was tougher for me to get started. I found myself delaying and just putting it off instead of just getting in front of this doggone camera and recording. And what made it so much harder to come back was that I knew I hadn't lost my enjoyment for it. I knew that in time that once I got back to recording again, I would find my enjoyment in it. It was just that I hadn't done it for so long and those doubts, they started creeping in. I didn't have that ease of, yo, let's just go do this thing. Let's just go knock it out. Let's go have some fun. And, people say all the time that, if you love something, man, it shouldn't be hard to come back to. But a lot of times it's hard because that thing mattered. If it didn't matter, there wouldn't be no type of hesitation. There wouldn't be any of that overthinking that we experience. There wouldn't be any of that emotional resistance at all. See, lack of joy for doing that thing is not a verdict. Most of the times, it's just what the disappointment is leaving us with. Once you see that clearly, the next question then becomes what you've been letting guide your decisions. A lot of people, they wait to feel ready before they act again. Get that feel. They check their emotions first and they treat that response like it's direction. But over time, those feelings, they quietly become the authority. But that emotional resistance, man, that can't be your intuition. A lot of times it's just memory of what you know from the past. It's your mind replaying what didn't work and trying to protect yourself from going through that same thing again. For me, true misalignment has always been when something didn't align with my goals or the results that I wanted. And if it wasn't moving the needle, if it wasn't making progress for me, if it wasn't getting me closer, that's how I knew it wasn't aligned. Or if it completely removed my peace. If I was doing the work, but I felt anxiety or I felt stress tied to it, that was also another signal. But emotional distance from disappointment, that feels different because deep down, I still knew that I enjoyed doing that. I love recording. I still knew that I could get the results that I wanted, getting monetized on YouTube. But that hesitation came from me not knowing when that result was going to come and if it would come in the time that I wanted and all of that effort that I put in would be rewarded. That's what so many of us experience. I'm sure you can relate to that because you make those investments and you want to make sure you're going to get your money's worth, your time's worth, your effort's worth. And that doubt, that's what creates the second guessing. That's what creates the delay. And a lot of it just came from me looking back at past disappointments or looking too far ahead at the results and the outcomes that I wanted and questioning whether or not I would ever get them. And what I realized is that I wasn't staying present and staying in the moment, staying present. I wasn't just identifying the result that I was going after and asking whether or not the strategy I was using could get me closer. It didn't have to be perfect, but remaining present is what mattered. See, you don't need emotional certainty to act with clarity. You don't need emotional certainty to act with clarity. You just need to stop letting discomfort lead you to making permanent decisions. And that's where action comes back into the picture in a very different way. You don't rebuild connection by trying to feel inspired again. You rebuild it by showing up even when it don't come easy. It ain't hard, but you got to do it because action has to come before emotion, not the other way around. Got to come before emotion. Action first. Waiting to feel ready, that's what creates delay. And that delay is what trains you to hesitate, to hesitate, to hesitate. Internally, I found myself questioning, like asking myself, yo, why am I hesitating? Yo, why am I delaying? Sometimes you don't know why. Because you know that you're capable of doing it. The same way I knew I was capable of doing it. And because I was capable, I knew I should be doing it. Check this out. Because if it's no longer coming easy, it's usually because it's trying to push me out my comfort zone. But because it no longer came easy, it pushed me outside my comfort zone. It became something I had to find joy in again. More effort, right? For me, getting back into it, it wasn't about feeling motivated. What I had to do was kind of force myself to just get up and do the thing. Not in a bad way, though. Not in a bad way. But in a way where I knew that once I got rolling, got back in front of this camera, the spark would come back. That joy would come back. The enjoyment that I used to get from creating videos, all of that would come back as it has. And the real issue was never about the ability, yo. It's never about the ability. It was just that it didn't feel the way it used to. Do you hear me? Commitment is what restores clarity far more often than waiting ever does. Man, I got to say that again, yo. Commitment restores clarity far more often than waiting ever does. See, feeling usually follows consistency, not the other way around. And once you stop letting those emotions lead you, that's when clarity in the direction that you should be going is going to start coming back. See, losing that feeling of joy doesn't mean that you lost your path. You haven't lost your path. A lot of times, it just means that you protected yourself after a disappointment. And the way forward is not about waiting to feel different. No. It's about choosing alignment over emotion, just one step at a time. If this helped you to reframe where you are so that you can find that love and that joy doing the thing that you've been wanting to do, that you love to do, please feel free to share your experience and your thoughts in the comments. I can't wait to hear them.